Well, very excited to have Vanessa Davis here today. We have worked with Vanessa on a variety of different initiatives with WeHero, but she is involved in the overall corporate social responsibility, employee engagement, employee altruism, that world and that universe. So thank you for joining us. Very excited to have you here today.
Excited to be here. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll just start off. We obviously know a little bit about your background, but if you wouldn't share just your background, the role you're in now, the role that you created for yourself, just to give people a little bit of background on where you sit.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. So I lead, as you said, corporate social responsibility as well as employee engagement for my company, Octo. We're a technology firm. We serve federal government agencies. So most of our employees are highly skilled technologists working on artificial intelligence, machine learning, really cool stuff that's helping our government agencies modernize and solve many problems we all face today. So I'm excited to step into this role as of last year. Actually, it was probably around January when I started having conversations with leadership about how the programs they had around corporate social responsibility, they're all kind of driven by different people across the board who were willing to step up and lead a little thing here and there. And we had this opportunity to make it like a full-blown program. I said, this could be a full-time position. So they said, go for it. And that led into the job that I hold today. Prior to that, background-wise, I worked for Arizona State University for over a decade, proud Sun Devil myself. And I worked in sustainability with the Global Institute of Sustainability and led program management for a global consortium, worked with faculty and students across 7 different countries, across 3 continents. I think we had 13 or 14 member universities on this program I supported at the time I left. And we were actually not just researching the sustainability challenges out there, but creating solutions, piloting them at member institutions and scaling them, even across governments. We had success across scaling sustainability curriculum across the German government. They put out, a German certified certification. And same thing with the Mexican government. So when I stepped into the technology role in the technology world writ large, I saw it as an opportunity to bring some of that solution making into this space, because lots of tech skills and a lot of people who are really passionate about the different causes, different challenges, wicked challenges that we face in society. And I want to put that skill to use. So leveraging things like skills-based volunteering is something that's really big in my current role now.
Yeah, well, appreciate that background. I did not know you weren't so involved in the sustainability and that whole programming. That's really, it's kind of full circle there, it seems like.
Yeah, it truly is. And really, I could share backstory even further back. It really started in 2nd grade when I ran for commissioner of the environment at my elementary school.
First of all, what elementary school had that role?
It was not. I sit actually here on the other side of the country of where my corporation is headquartered in Reston, Virginia. That's where Octo is. I'm in Arizona, in Tempe, Arizona. Arizona is not seen historically as a place where you learn about sustainability education, at least not when I was in elementary school. That was the one year I happened to live in California. So this was in Northern California. We had that baked into our curriculum. So it was a student government role. And it was the same time I watched Aaron Brockovich. And so, just these little things in society are the things that give us passion and that growth. And, ended up meeting the person who led ASU's Global Institute of Sustainability, and he recruited me. So that's how I got into that job.
So awesome. Well, as a resident of Northern California, I'm not surprised that was part of the curriculum, and I'm glad we had a little bit of an influence on you.
Yeah. Go Carmichael.
Yeah. So when you transitioned to this role, it sounded like last January. How did you design the role, and kind of what goals were you trying to achieve? And I guess ultimately, why did the leadership team enable you to do this, and what were they hoping to get out of it?
Great question. So I came actually from another technology company, Connexta, which was Octo's first acquisition. And in that role, I was the office manager and oversaw our corporate social responsibility initiatives, employee engagement. We put on lots of socials. We had lots of wellness related programming. And that was something I was able to step into. This new company, Octo, had acquired us. And, so now we've got many more employees we can leverage to drive impact. And, I just showcased that to the leadership. Leadership has all been very engaged in corporate social responsibilities from the get-go. Our CEO himself donated $10 million last year to Virginia Tech. A quarter of that went to launch the market at Virginia Tech, which is helping to close the food security gap on campus with students who might be a little more food poor. And that's important, because if you're hungry, the learning outcomes are not up to par at all. And then the rest of those funds went to help launch now the Singani, this is Mehul Singani is our CEO, the Singani Center of Artificial Intelligence and Data Analytics there. So, it just goes to show that, when you have leadership that really is aligned with social responsibility as their own personal passion, it makes it that much easier to sell these things. And I got to tell you, since we did this, I feel like I've seen it more and more coming out of like the board side of the corporate world. It's sustainability, ESG, so your environmental, social governance initiatives. These things are really top of mind right now across not just Octo, but I'd say industries across the board.
Yeah. And do you think that that interest is largely reputational driven, or do you think people are starting to understand the benefit of doing these things for their company internally?
I think nowadays it's leaning more toward the latter of what you just pointed out. I can share with you, when I was a sustainability student at ASU, while I worked at ASU, because thank you for the free tuition, I love that benefit. I heard a lot more about greenwashing, and that was more prevalent back in those days, where it was more about we're doing this because it looks like the right thing to do. It makes us look great on paper. That said, when you looked at actions taken by a lot of companies, sometimes the actions didn't really align with the commitments they were putting out in social media for existence. But now I think the education is starting to catch on. A lot of corporations are starting to educate their staff around sustainability challenges that we face and get them engaged in, what are personal actions you can take, what are actions your team can take collectively. And that's something that we're doing with our Octo Impact Hub, which is our internal employee engagement platform that we partner with WeSpire on.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I think that trend is a positive one away from the greenwashing, more towards understanding it. And I think we get really excited that more and more of these incredible, institutions, universities out there are just coming out with great data to support this, what I think companies are already seeing. And so I'm excited to hear that you think the trend is a positive one. And so you're sitting in your seat. What are your annual goals? And how do you measure your success, I guess, for your business, but also for the communities that you're trying to support?
Yeah, great question. So where I sit, I've got a big scope. So what's our social responsibility impact in the communities that we serve, but also around team morale, keeping a pulse on team morale is important because that impacts your engagement. And if you don't have high levels of engagement, then you're not able to make that impact in the communities that you're serving. So team morale, employee well-being, and community impact, I'd say are the three areas where the goals that I oversee fall into. And then we work together formulate those goals. And so as a sustainability professional myself, I'm really big on not trying to create things myself in a vacuum. I understand, it's important to have stakeholders involved in those conversations. And so we were very intentional from the start of developing, really formalizing our CSR program about making sure we had all the right stakeholders in the room. So our CSR committee, which has, I think, currently around 30 members on it, includes representatives from every business unit in the organization and from every location where our employees sit as well. And these people range from entry level to very senior level folks who, I've got one who leads our Center of Excellence for Artificial Intelligence that sits on our committee. So, it's a range of different expertise as well. And so you're bringing, and then diversity as well, you're bringing all those different perspectives to the table when you have opportunities so that you've got all those voices to answer the question, is this aligned with our strategy, which at Octo, our CSR strategy is really centered on serving vulnerable populations, so lifting up people so they don't fall through the cracks, and then also serving food security, technology education pipeline, and that goes from K to gray, or from the classroom to the boardroom, if you like that language better, and then also health outcomes, because we happen to work with quite a few health agencies with the government. So it helps, and it helps for someone like myself who was successful in advocating for a single position to do all of this big work, to actually have the resources, the man and the woman power to actually kick these things off and make impact, because it really does take a village.
Yeah, doing good is hard is the one thing we all probably overlook. But I think the thing I appreciate the most is that 30-person working group or committee, because I think often we see at companies, maybe there's a 3-person CSR division if they're a large company, and then they are kind of reporting into one person, and there's tangential relationships with the business leaders and HR. But at the end of the day, we think, and I'm curious if you agree with this, the program's only really working if you're listening to what leaders want about the mission of the company, as well as what, the entry-level employee wants. And so it seems like instead of doing a bunch of surveying and interviews, you kind of just combine that into a really diverse working group. And so everyone's moving in the right direction.
And I'd say really all of it, the working group is really critical for having that collaboration so you can make an impact. But I think surveys they're still very useful tool for especially keeping a pulse on employee morale. And then having those interviews, those more informal touch bases with your community partners, with the different employee groups that you serve. I think all of that's important because, this is all holistic. We've got to take all of the data, the quantitative and the qualitative, and that's what tells us, are we really serving our mission here?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, it sounds like you have enough man and woman power behind you to do that, which is awesome to hear. Industry has changed a lot due to COVID and just the whole working world and the employee engagement CSR world. Would be really curious to hear, how Octo has handled it. How have the surveys around employee satisfaction gone? What tools have you used to mitigate that? And I guess as you look out 2 years to 5 years, assuming you have that crystal ball, what is going to change and what is going to be the steady state going forward?
Yeah, a lot has changed with the pandemic. And, I tend to be probably an overly optimistic person. And so I'll share, I think a lot of silver linings came out of it, despite, the immense challenges that, families are facing that have been directly impacted by COVID. I think it's helped push corporations and organizations writ large into a zone where they're more comfortable with giving their employees a little more autonomy. As someone, when I worked in sustainability at Arizona State University, I was an executive assistant. I remember back then pitching to my amazing boss, who's still my mentor at the time, let me work from home like 1 day a week, because I feel like if I have less distractions, I could get so much more done. That didn't fly at the time. Fast forward to pandemic, I still am friends with a number of folks in the executive assistant world, and they all have excelled during the pandemic because they were able to take that autonomy and move projects forward faster, and because they have the right mode to collaborate. They know how to get things done. They're superheroes, if you will, of any organization. Want to find someone who can do someone at an organization, look for the executive assistant. Just a side note there. But in general, for Octo, we found a lot of success in leaning into that autonomy and flexibility and trusting our employees. And we've had great results with it. And I think our federal government customers, from what I've heard through our program management team, they've also had the same experience, and some of them have even, at least up until today, and who knows, maybe it'll end up being a little more permanent, laxed, their policies around being able to work from home. So now Octo officially has an alternative work schedule policy that allows flexibility. So essentially, it doesn't matter what hours you're working, as long as you're putting in the hours and you're able to create a set schedule for yourself that you and your manager can agree on, and that helps serve employees such as myself who have school-age kids at home who were doing school during the pandemic, and certain portions of school, they really need that extra assistance. And so it really went a long way in showcasing to our employee workforce that we're here for them, and we recognize that we can't be successful as an organization unless we are enabling them to be successful as individuals. And so we stood up that the flexible work schedule. We stood up the employee engagement platform that I talked about, our Octo Impact Hub, 2 weeks after we all moved to remote work. And I think that's really what truly helped fill the gap in the social experience, because we're all experiencing isolation, or we're overwhelmed by, our family members being around a little too much. And so having this ability to connect, I think there was an appetite for it even before the pandemic. And I suspect that many workplaces are like Octo, where you've got a distributed workforce and, different people that are yearning to connect with folks, from another team, from another location. And when you've got these platforms like WeSpire, which we dub Octo Impact Hub, that lets those people come together. They can share stories. They can take action together. They can do virtual volunteering with WeHero. I remember it was December. We did our first engagement with you all, writing letters to the elderly, in the communities where our employees live and work. And that was, I heard from a lot of our employees who engaged, a nice mental break as well from, the craziness of the workday and the pandemic in general, and made us all feel good because we're all yearning to see our aunts and uncles and cousins and grandmas and grandpas, and we couldn't do that then. So I think, it goes both ways. And once you get employees engaged, it's like they're hooked, and then they keep coming back for more, and then you're serving more and more impact.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think back to pre-COVID, we worked with some of the really large tech companies in the Bay Area, and the big problem they were having is they had half of their product management team in San Francisco, half in New York, and maybe a few people in Seattle and Atlanta. And they're like, this is one team. We need to find a way to work together. And those were big barriers. And I think now, like you said, the barriers have broken down. There's a sense of normalcy. And I think especially for the skills-based, knowledge-based economy that you guys operate in, I think empowering your employees through the flexibility is just really powerful, and can can drive engagement when done the right way. And it sounds like the WeSpire platform allows you to do that in an efficient and kind of fruitful way, which is great.
And it's very action oriented. So the campaigns are really, each campaign has different action items listed. And then we're collecting that data in the background. So picture a sustainability campaign that says, here are a list of ways you can personally impact sustainability. Change out your light bulbs to LED. And then we're ticking off those actions. And that's actually, quantifiable data that we're collecting to be able to say across our workforce, we're saving this much energy in their households, so it's not just operationally, but, impacting that behavior change, which as someone who, my free degree from ASU was in interdisciplinary studies focused on sustainability and sociology, because I feel like behavior change is the most toughest nut of sustainability to crack. And, that's why, I'm a big supporter of WeSpire and platforms like that use action-driven campaigns.
Yeah. So, and then being able to quantify it through corporate level data just provides more buy-in from the leadership, which is awesome. Yeah. All right. Final question. And I'm going to make it a little harder on you. So you obviously work at a company where the CEO himself is so passionate about this.
Yeah.
Now, let's say Octo doesn't exist and you're going to another technology company, let's say 75 to 100 people. The CEO gives back personally, but it's not his passion and he's not doing it at the scale that the Octo CEO is. Same time, his peer groups, everyone's saying, hey, you need to focus on, CSR, employee engagements. You're dropped in there. What do you do? What plan do you set? And what do you achieve over the first 6 to 12 months to try to make this successful?
It's a great question. And I've run into other CSR professionals who've asked it before. And honestly, I wouldn't have done anything different than when we started last January. So if I look at like a 6-month period, I look at pitching this to our CEO, and if it was at a different company, I would still show like, here's the value add to the company, and here's the value add to your employee base, and here's the value add to the community. So you've got to show them, lead them to the yes, we support you, and empower them by saying, we've got staff here at Octo or whatever your company is that can help drive this. We don't have to necessarily create a whole nother 10-person team. Octo is proof in the pudding. We have all voluntary based committee members, and they get a total of 1 hour of time per month that is paid. The rest of it is voluntary. And it just goes to show that, when you give someone the opportunity to step up and apply their skills in a really cool way that serves the community, they'll do it. Especially when you do things like incentivize volunteer time too. So we just launched a Volunteer Grants for Good program where once an employee logs 25 hours, they get a $250 credit on the Octo Impact Hub to go and give back to a charity of their choice. And awesome. Typically, an employee will give back to that same organization they gave their time to. So essentially, the corporation is helping to enable their impact to go twice as far. Support your employees, show up for your employees, and they will show up for you. I'll share that not every senior leadership person I go to, fully embraces it the same way our CEO does. But I'm always able to get them over to that over that point where they at least feel like they're willing to try it. And then once you show results, you can't stop it from growing. So that's my challenge now is, I've got me, one full-time position, and our opportunities to impact community have just been growing exponentially. As a result of that, we now have a little bit more support. I've got a person for 8 hours a week that's been super helpful. And we've got double the CSR budget this year compared to here. So, if you can take that back to your leadership team and showcase, here's what's possible. Give me a little leeway to pilot this, pitch it as a pilot if they're not that comfortable with it. Because I think once you start into the work and you're starting to show outcomes, keep sharing that with your executive leadership team, because they're going to share it up with their board. And these are things that, even investing teams, boards everywhere are looking for from their corporations. So it's important.
Yeah. I love what you mentioned, just how once you get the employees involved, there's no stopping them. Yeah. It's almost like a snowball effect, or I guess in Arizona, like a sand just continually growing. Yeah, exactly. And that, I think, ultimately, because the data is there, you're going to continue to see more success and engagement, and the leadership team can't say no to that, I feel like, once they see the benefits.
Yeah, especially when you have employees, commenting publicly on your big Slack channels, like, hey, we really love that we were able to nominate those public charities, that the corporation put up money matching funds for, or we were able to submit our own designs for a company t-shirt, and then we had peer-based voting, and then we sent out the t-shirt to everyone. So engage your employees, and it's what creates a stickativity too. If you want to keep your employees retained,
like that word,
it really helps to create reasons that they want to come to work. Make them happy to show up every day, no matter if it's in person or at home.
Yeah, they're still showing up just the same.
Exactly.
Well, Vanessa, I really appreciate it. As always, great to learn from you and learn about the success that you're having. And if anyone wants to reach out to Vanessa, I'm sure she's available on LinkedIn and online. I don't know if you have a Twitter that you post about this type of stuff on, but you should if you don't.
Not as active on Twitter anymore, but I'm VB Greeny there. I'm definitely active on LinkedIn, so look me up. I'm happy to connect with anyone and everyone. Share the love.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you again, Vanessa, and we will talk again later.